The morning started like any other for Rebecca, with the familiar scent of coffee filling her kitchen as she prepared for another busy day at the tech company where she worked as a senior software engineer. She was scrolling through her emails when a notification from her banking app caught her attention. At first, she almost dismissed it. After all, she was used to seeing large transactions related to her work projects. But something made her pause. The charges were from a luxury resort in the Maldives, a place she'd always dreamed of visiting with her husband, Ray. Her heart skipped a beat as she remembered Ray mentioning he'd be away on a business trip this week. He'd been vague about the details, which wasn't like him at all. "That's strange," she muttered to herself, reaching for her purse to check her credit card. Her stomach dropped when she couldn't find it in its usual spot. She dumped the contents of her purse onto the kitchen counter, searching frantically through loyalty cards and receipts, but her platinum credit card was nowhere to be found. Taking a deep breath, Rebecca tried to stay calm. Maybe she'd left it at the office. But deep down, something felt terribly wrong. She picked up her phone and dialed Ray's office, her fingers trembling slightly as she punched in the familiar numbers. "Hi, this is Rebecca, Ray's wife," she said when his assistant answered. "I just needed to confirm some details about his business trip this week." There was a pause on the other end. "Business trip?" the assistant asked, confusion clear in her voice. "Ray doesn't have any business trips scheduled this week. In fact, he took personal leave days." Rebecca's world tilted sideways. The room suddenly felt too warm, too small. She sat down heavily on one of the kitchen stools, her free hand gripping the edge of the counter. 8 years of marriage and now this. She opened her laptop, her technical expertise kicking in despite her emotional turmoil. Within minutes, she was looking at her credit card's recent activity in detail. The charges told a story she wasn't prepared for. 2 first-class plane tickets to the Maldives, a week's reservation at an exclusive resort, couples spa packages, sunset dinner cruises. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ray, "Meeting running late. Don't wait up." Rebecca stared at the message, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. He was probably already on the plane, thinking he'd executed the perfect getaway. What he didn't know was that her credit card wasn't just any card, it was a special corporate edition with advanced security features she helped develop. As she sat there, processing the betrayal, Rebecca's tech-savvy mind was already forming a plan. She'd built her career on solving complex problems, and while this might be the most personal challenge she'd ever faced, she knew exactly what to do next. She wouldn't just be a victim in this story, she would make sure justice was served, one digital footprint at a time. Looking at their wedding photo on the wall, Rebecca felt a mix of sadness and determination. "Oh, Ray," she whispered, "you really should have remembered what I do for a living." She'd pulled out her phone again, but this time to call her lawyer. This wasn't just about a missing credit card anymore, this was about taking back control of her life. The sunlight streaming through the kitchen window caught the edge of her laptop screen, and Rebecca straightened her shoulders. She might have started this day as a trusting wife, but she would end it as something else entirely, a woman ready to fight back with every tool at her disposal. Rebecca sat in her home office, surrounded by the soft glow of multiple computer screens, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The shock of discovering Ray's betrayal had turned into something else, a quiet, focused determination. She'd barely slept, but adrenaline kept her going as she began to unravel the threads of her husband's deception. Her old college friend, Linda, who worked at the bank, had been horrified when Rebecca called. "Give me a few hours," Linda had said. "I'll help you access the security footage from when those tickets were purchased. This isn't just about a relationship anymore, it's fraud." While waiting for Linda's call back, Rebecca dove into her own investigation. She pulled up Ray's recent credit card statements, which she'd always ignored before, trusting him completely. Now, patterns emerged that made her stomach churn. Regular expenses at high-end restaurants she'd never been to, jewelry store purchases on days that weren't near any birthdays or anniversaries, and hotel charges in their own city. Her phone buzzed. Linda had come through with the footage. Rebecca downloaded the video file with trembling hands. There he was, her husband of 8 years, standing at the airline counter with a woman she recognized immediately. Her coffee mug nearly slipped from her grasp. "Jenny Thompson," Rebecca whispered, the name tasting bitter in her mouth. the glamorous real estate agent who'd supposedly been such an important client. The same woman Ray had mentioned at least twice a week for the past few months. Just networking, he'd said. She brings in huge property deals. Rebecca opened her social media accounts, something she rarely bothered with. There they were, dozens of photos of Ray and Jenny at business dinners and networking events. In every picture, they stood just a little too close, smiled just a little too warmly. The comments section was filled with heart emojis and inside jokes. "I've been so blind," Rebecca muttered, rubbing her tired eyes. A memory surfaced. Last month's charity gala, where Ray had insisted on going alone because she needed rest after her big project launch. There was a photo from that night too, Ray in his best suit, Jenny in a red dress, both holding champagne glasses and beaming at the camera. Her phone rang. It was her friend Kate from the tech industry. "Rebecca, I just saw your message. Are you okay? Do you need me to come over?" "I'm okay," Rebecca replied, her voice stronger than she expected. "But I could use your help with something. Remember that transaction tracking system we developed last year? The one that can trace connected purchases across multiple accounts?" "Of course. Why do you?" Kate paused. Oh no, he didn't." "He did," Rebecca confirmed. "And I'm going to need every tool we've got." Over the next few hours, Rebecca and Kate built a detailed timeline. Every dinner, every gift, every secret meeting, it was all there in the data. Ray had been careful, but not careful enough for someone with Rebecca's skills. The final piece clicked when they found the connection between Jenny's real estate firm and a new bank account Ray had opened 3 months ago. As evening fell, Rebecca sat back in her chair, looking at the wall of evidence on her screens. 8 years of marriage, and she'd never once checked. Never once doubted. The trust she'd given so freely had been her weakness, but now her strength, her intelligence, her connections, her expertise would be her power. Her phone lit up with a message from Ray. "Missing you. These business meetings are so boring." Rebecca looked at the message, then at the airline confirmation showing he was currently somewhere over the Indian Ocean with Jenny. She didn't reply. Instead, she picked up her phone and dialed another number, the one for her family lawyer. "Hi, Nancy. Yes, I need to see you first thing tomorrow. And bring whatever paperwork you've got about financial fraud in marriages. I've got quite a story to tell you." As she ended the call, Rebecca noticed her reflection in the darkened window. She looked different somehow. Stronger. More determined. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, she had work to do. The night was young, and so was her investigation. The morning light filtered through the blinds of Nancy's law office as Rebecca sat across from her family lawyer, spreading out printed bank statements and transaction records across the mahogany desk. The leather chair creaked softly as she leaned forward, her voice steady despite the emotional storm inside. "Look at this pattern," Rebecca pointed to a series of transfers. "He's been moving money from our joint savings account for months. Small amounts at first, then larger ones." She pulled up another document on her tablet. "And here's where he opened a separate account without telling me." Nancy adjusted her reading glasses, her expression growing more serious with each document she reviewed. "He's been planning this for a while," she said, making notes. "But there's something he didn't count on, isn't there?" A knowing smile crossed her face as she looked at Rebecca. Rebecca nodded, pulling out her corporate credit card agreement. "This card isn't just any premium card. I helped design its security system last year. Every transaction creates a digital fingerprint, location, time, associated purchases, everything." She paused, allowing herself a small smile. "Ray has no idea what he's walked into." Her phone buzzed, a notification from her credit card's fraud detection system. She'd secretly activated all its advanced features last night. The system was already flagging unusual spending patterns at the Maldives resort. Ray probably thought he was being clever using her card for the big expenses, assuming she wouldn't check until month-end. "I've already contacted our bank's fraud department," Rebecca continued, showing Nancy more documentation. "They're building a case. It's not just about the credit card theft, it's about the systematic moving of joint assets without consent." Nancy's assistant brought in fresh coffee as they worked through the morning. Rebecca wrapped her hands around the warm mug, finding comfort in its familiar aroma. "The thing is," she said softly, "I don't just want to stop him. I want to make sure he faces consequences for his choices. And he will, Nancy assured her, pulling out a thick folder. What he's done isn't just morally wrong, it's illegal. But we need to be strategic about this. Tell me about this fraud detection system of yours again. For the next hour, they crafted a careful plan. Rebecca's technical expertise would be their secret weapon. While Ray thought he was living it up in paradise, he had no idea that every swipe of her credit card was building evidence against him. There's something else, Rebecca said, pulling up her banking app. I've been saving independently for years, my personal emergency fund. Ray doesn't know about it. She smiled slightly. I guess I never completely forgot my mum's advice about keeping something for myself. Nancy nodded approvingly. Smart woman, your mother. Now, here's what we're going to do next. She outlined their strategy step by step. They would document everything, involve the right authorities, and most importantly, time their moves perfectly. As they worked, Rebecca's phone kept buzzing with fraud alerts. Ray was trying to book expensive excursions, beachfront dinners, spa treatments. Each attempt was like another nail in the coffin he was building for himself. Should we stop the cart now? Rebecca asked, staring at the latest alert. Nancy thought for a moment. Not yet. Let's wait until they try to check in. Maximum impact, maximum evidence. Sometimes you have to let people dig their own hole. Rebecca felt a strange mix of sadness and satisfaction. This wasn't how she'd imagined her marriage would end, but she was grateful for her foresight in her career choices. The security systems she helped develop would now help her protect herself. Looking out Nancy's office window at the busy street below, Rebecca thought about how life could change so quickly. Just days ago, she was a trusting wife. Now she was orchestrating a sophisticated response to betrayal, using every professional skill she'd earned. One more thing, Nancy said, pulling out another form. Let's talk about freezing the joint accounts. Timing is everything, and we want to make sure we do this right. Rebecca straightened in her chair, feeling more confident than she had in days. She might have been blindsided by Ray's betrayal, but now she was in her element, solving complex problems with precision and skill. Let him enjoy his paradise for now. The storm was coming, and he wouldn't see it until it was too late. The pristine beaches of the Maldives stretched out before Ray and Jenny as their seaplane approached the luxury resort. The crystal-clear waters and overwater bungalows looked like something from a dream vacation magazine. Jenny squeezed Ray's hand, her expensive bracelet catching the sunlight. I can't believe we're finally here, she whispered, completely unaware of the storm about to break. The seaplane docked at the resort's private pier, where staff waited with fresh coconuts and cool towels. Ray strutted confidently toward the check-in desk, his arm around Jenny's waist. He planned everything perfectly, or so he thought. The resort manager greeted them with a practiced smile, tablet in hand. Welcome to Paradise Cove Resort, the manager said warmly. May I have your credit card for check-in? We'll need to process the full payment for your stay, as per our policy. Ray pulled out Rebecca's platinum card with a flourish. Of course, he said smoothly, handing it over. Jenny was already taking photos of the infinity pool, imagining the Instagram posts to come. The manager ran the card, frowned, ran it again. I'm sorry, sir, but this card seems to be declining. His fingers moved swiftly across the tablet. In fact, it's showing as blocked for suspicious activity. Ray's confident smile faltered. That's impossible. Try it again. Sir, the system is flagging this as a potentially stolen card. The manager's tone changed subtly, becoming more formal. Do you have another form of payment? Sweat began to bead on Ray's forehead despite the cool ocean breeze. He pulled out his personal credit card, then another and another. Each one declined. Jenny stopped taking photos and walked back to the desk, her expression shifting from confusion to concern. What's going on? She asked, her voice losing its dreamy quality. Ray? The manager cleared his throat. I'm afraid without payment, we cannot check you in. Additionally, our policy requires us to report suspected credit card fraud to the authorities. Jenny's face paled. Fraud? Ray, what is he talking about? She grabbed her phone, quickly checking her own bank account. Her eyes widened. My card's maxed out from the flight and shopping yesterday. You said you were covering the resort. Other guests began to stare as Ray's voice rose. This is ridiculous. I'm a successful real estate agent. Just let me make a few calls. He pulled out his phone, only to find most of his banking apps showing error messages about suspicious activity. The manager spoke quietly but firmly. I'm sorry, but without payment, you'll need to make other arrangements. The next seaplane leaves in 30 minutes. Jenny's perfectly made-up face crumpled. Other arrangements? We're on a private island in the middle of the ocean. Where are we supposed to go? Ray loosened his collar, reality crashing down around him. He'd been so careful, planning this for months. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? He tried calling his bank, but got stuck in an endless loop of fraud verification questions he couldn't answer. You told me you were wealthy, Jenny hissed, grabbing her designer suitcase. You said this was all taken care of. Other guests were openly watching now as the dream vacation dissolved into a nightmare. The manager gestured discreetly, and 2 security staff appeared nearby. The seaplane is waiting. I suggest you take it. As they were escorted back to the pier, Jenny's anger boiled over. Do you know how many clients I had to reschedule for this? How this will look when I don't post any resort photos? My whole social media campaign is ruined. Ray barely heard her. He was staring at his phone at the last message he'd sent Rebecca, missing you. These business meetings are so boring. Now he understood. She knew. Somehow she'd known everything. The seaplane ride back to the main island was silent and tense. Jenny sat as far from Ray as possible, furiously texting someone on her phone. Ray stared out the window at the paradise slipping away below them, his mind racing. All his careful plans, all the secret accounts, how had it all unraveled so fast? What he didn't know was that at that exact moment, Rebecca was sitting in her lawyer's office, watching everything unfold through the fraud detection system she'd helped create. Each declined transaction, each flagged attempt, all documented and time-stamped for the authorities. The seaplane touched down at Mail International Airport, leaving Ray and Jenny stranded with their expensive luggage and nowhere to go. Paradise had turned into a very expensive lesson about karma, and it was only the beginning. The humid air of Mail International Airport clung to Ray and Jenny as they sat in the crowded terminal, their expensive luggage now feeling like anchors. Jenny's designer dress was wrinkled, her perfect makeup smudged from stress and heat. She hadn't spoken to Ray in hours, keeping her distance as if his bad luck might be contagious. I can't believe this, Jenny muttered, trying again to book a flight home on her nearly maxed-out credit card. Do you know how much this is costing me? My emergency fund is almost gone. She glared at Ray, who was slumped in an uncomfortable airport chair, still trying to access his frozen accounts. A young couple walked past them, headed to their honeymoon destination, full of joy and excitement. Jenny watched them go, her expression bitter. That was supposed to be us living the dream. Instead, we're stuck in this airport like criminals. Ray's phone buzzed, another overdraft notice. He tried using his backup cards for a hotel room, but they'd all been declined. His perfectly planned escape had turned into a nightmare, and he was starting to realize just how thoroughly he'd been outmaneuvered. I don't understand, he said, more to himself than Jenny. I was so careful. How did she know? Jenny's laugh was harsh. Now it makes sense. Your wife. The one you said was just a boring tech person. She did this, didn't she? She stood up, grabbing her bags. You know what? I'm calling my cousin in Singapore. At least I can get a flight there and figure things out. You're on your own. Before Ray could respond, his phone lit up with a message from his real estate office. His stomach dropped as he read it. Urgent meeting required regarding recent client complaints and financial discrepancies. Your license may be under review. The air conditioning felt colder suddenly. He'd used client meetings as covers for his dates with Jenny, shifted appointments around for their secret rendezvous. Now it was all coming back to haunt him. Meanwhile, Jenny was having her own crisis. Her social media followers were starting to notice something was wrong. She was supposed to be posting luxurious resort content, but instead she was silent. Her influencer partnerships were sending concerned messages about missed deadlines. This is ruining everything, she snapped, furiously typing explanations to her sponsors. I built my brand on luxury real estate and lifestyle content. How am I supposed to explain being stranded in an airport? My reputation will be destroyed. Ray barely heard her. His phone was filling with notifications. His joint accounts with Rebecca were completely frozen, his credit cards were cancelled, and worst of all, there was an email from the police department requesting an interview about suspected financial fraud. A family walking past gave them odd looks, two well-dressed people surrounded by luxury bags, clearly in distress in the terminal. Jenny noticed and turned away, trying to hide her face. Her Instagram-perfect world was crumbling around her. "You told me you had money," she accused Ray. "You said you were successful, that you could give me the lifestyle I deserved. Was any of it true?" Ray loosened his tie, feeling suffocated. "I am successful, or I was. Everything was fine until..." He trailed off, reality finally sinking in. Everything wasn't fine. He'd built a house of cards, and now it was collapsing. Jenny's phone rang, her cousin agreeing to help. "I'm booking a flight to Singapore," she said, not looking at Ray. "Don't try to contact me again. My followers can't know about any of this. I'll tell them the resort flooding cancelled our stay or something." As Jenny walked away, her heels clicking on the airport floor, Ray sat alone with his thoughts. The terminal screens showed flights departing to paradise destinations, all places he couldn't go. His phone kept buzzing with more bad news, work problems, financial alerts, messages from increasingly worried friends asking why the police had been asking about him. Back home, Rebecca was in a meeting with the bank's fraud department, methodically documenting every unauthorized transaction, every deception. Her technical skills, the very ones Ray had dismissed as boring, were now the tools of his undoing. The terminal's air conditioning hummed as Ray contemplated his options, all of them bad. He tried to steal paradise, but instead, he'd lost everything: his marriage, his reputation, possibly even his career. And somewhere in the Maldives, a luxury resort suite stood empty, a testament to dreams built on betrayal and lies. After 48 miserable hours in various airports, Ray finally broke down and did the one thing he'd been avoiding. He called Rebecca. His hands shook as he dialed her number from a quiet corner of the airport coffee shop. Each ring felt like an eternity. "Hello, Ray." Rebecca's voice was calm, professional even. No anger, no tears. Somehow that was worse than screaming would have been. "Rebecca, listen," he started, running his hand through his disheveled hair. "Something's wrong with all our accounts. I can't access anything and I'm stuck at the airport. I need your help, To." "To what, Ray?" She cut in quietly. "To continue stealing from me? To keep lying about where you are and who you're with?" The coffee shop's ambient noise faded away as Ray's world narrowed to just this conversation. "What are you talking about? I'm at a business conference. In the Maldives." Rebecca's voice took on an edge. "With Jenny? How interesting. I wasn't aware real estate conferences were held at luxury beach resorts." Ray's coffee grew cold in front of him as the full reality of his situation hit. "How did you?" "No." Rebecca finished for him. "Well, let's see. First, there was my missing credit card, the one you stole from my wallet. The same card I helped design the security system for at work. Every transaction you made has been flagged, documented, and reported to the authorities." She paused, and Ray could hear papers rustling. "Then there's the money you've been moving from our joint accounts. Did you think I wouldn't notice? I have every transfer documented, Ray. Every lie, every secret count, every dinner with Jenny that you claimed was a client meeting." "Rebecca, please." Ray's voice cracked. "I can explain everything. We can work this out." "Work what out?" Rebecca's laugh was without humor. "The credit card theft? The financial fraud? Or maybe the way you've been using client meetings to cover up your affair? By the way, the real estate board is very interested in that last part." Ray's stomach dropped. "The board? You contacted the board?" "I didn't have to. Apparently, some of your clients had already filed complaints about missed meetings and irregular behavior. Funny how things like that come to light when people start looking closely." Around Ray, airport life continued. Families reuniting, couples embarking on honest vacations, business travelers heading to real conferences. He felt like a ghost watching it all, trapped in his own personal nightmare. "What do you want?" he asked finally, his voice small. "Want?" Rebecca's tone was measured. "I want you to understand exactly what you've done. I've already filed a police report for the credit card theft. I've documented every unauthorized charge, every fraudulent transaction. My lawyer has all the paperwork ready for divorce proceedings. Divorce? Ray choked out. But our history, our 8 years together. You should have thought about that before you stole from me, Rebecca replied. Before you used our marriage as a cover for your affair. Tell me, did Jenny know you were funding your luxury lifestyle with stolen money? Ray glanced around a coffee shop, paranoid that others might hear. She's gone, he admitted. Left for Singapore when everything fell apart. Of course she did. Rebecca's voice held no sympathy. She wanted the fantasy you were selling, Ray. When that fell apart, so did your relationship. A flight announcement echoed through the terminal. Ray watched a happy couple walk past, their hands intertwined, and felt the weight of everything he'd lost. I've frozen all our joint accounts, Rebecca continued. My lawyer will contact you about dividing assets, though given the evidence of fraud, don't expect that to go in your favor. Oh, and Ray. The police will probably want to talk to you when you finally make it home. Home, Ray repeated numbly. Rebecca, where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. Her voice softened slightly, not with forgiveness but with finality. You chose this path, Ray. Every lie, every theft, every betrayal, those were your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. The line went dead, leaving Ray alone in the crowded airport. His designer watch, bought with stolen money, showed it was just past noon. Somewhere in paradise, an empty luxury suite stood as testament to his failed deception, and back home, the life he'd thrown away was being carefully dismantled by the woman he'd underestimated for far too long. 3 months after the failed Maldives getaway, Rebecca sat in her favorite coffee shop, watching autumn leaves dance past the window. Her laptop was open to a presentation she'd been working on, a new financial security system inspired by her own experience. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Local real estate agent pleads guilty to credit card fraud. She didn't need to read the article. She'd been there in court yesterday, watching Ray accept his plea deal. He looked smaller somehow, his designer suits replaced by off-the-rack clothes, his confident smile gone. The judge had been particularly interested in how he used his real estate position to cover up his activities. Mind if I join you? Linda, her friend from the bank, slid into the seat across from her with 2 fresh coffees. You look lost in thought. Just thinking about how much has changed, Rebecca replied, accepting the coffee with a grateful smile. The fraud department wants me to help train their staff now. Apparently, my case has become quite the learning example. Linda nodded, stirring her coffee. I heard Jenny's back in town. Her social media influence took quite a hit when the truth came out. Hard to maintain a luxury lifestyle brand when you're caught up in a fraud scandal. Rebecca's phone lit up with another message, this time from her lawyer. The divorce was final, and the judge had ruled in her favor on the asset division, citing Ray's pattern of deception and financial misconduct. You know what's funny? Rebecca said, closing her laptop. Ray used to tease me about my boring job in financial security. He never understood that I was protecting people from people like him. The coffee shop was busy with the lunch crowd. At a nearby table, a young couple was planning their honeymoon, their eyes bright with dreams and trust. Rebecca felt a slight pang, but not of regret, of hope for them. The real estate board made their decision, Linda mentioned, scrolling through her phone. Ray's license is revoked. Between that and the fraud charges, he's basically starting from scratch. Rebecca took a sip of her coffee, remembering how just a few months ago, her world had seemed to be falling apart. Now she was giving lectures at security conferences, sharing her story to help others protect themselves. Oh, I almost forgot. Linda pulled out a magazine from her bag. You're mentioned in this article about women in cybersecurity. They're calling you a pioneer in personal financial protection. Rebecca laughed softly. All because my ex-husband didn't realize who he was stealing from. She paused, then added more seriously, I've been getting messages from other women who've gone through similar things. They feel so helpless at first. And now you're helping them, Linda pointed out. Your new security protocols are being adopted by 3 major banks. That's quite a legacy from a failed marriage. Outside, the autumn wind picked up, sending more leaves swirling past the window. Rebecca watched them, thinking about cycles and changes. She'd been working with a local women's shelter, teaching financial literacy and safety. Next week, she was scheduled to give a talk about detecting financial infidelity. "I got another job offer today," she mentioned, pulling up the email. "A consulting position with an international fraud prevention team. They want me to help design protection systems for other people who might be in situations like mine." Linda grinned. "Look at you, turning betrayal into a whole new career path. Aren't you going to take it?" Rebecca's new apartment keys clinked against her laptop as she reached for her coffee. Her new life, built from the ashes of betrayal, was becoming something she never expected, something stronger. "I think I will," she said, a quiet confidence in her voice. "Someone needs to help protect people from the rays of the world. Might as well be someone who knows exactly how they think." As they finished their coffee, Rebecca's phone lit up with another message. A thank you note from a woman who'd attended her last workshop. "I checked my accounts like you suggested," it read. "You probably saved me from making a huge mistake. Thank you." Rebecca smiled, thinking about how life's worst moments could lead to unexpected purpose. She'd lost a husband but found a mission. Her story wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about transformation, about using your skills to protect others, about rising stronger from life's hardest lessons. The autumn sun caught the edge of her laptop screen, where her presentation was still open. The title slide read, "Financial Security in the Digital Age. Personal Protection in a Connected World." Below it was a quote she'd chosen carefully. "Sometimes the worst betrayals lead us to our greatest strength." It wasn't the life she planned, but maybe it was the life she was meant to have all along.